So here we are again, back by unpopular and unfortunate demand. I wasn't going to record anything tonight. In fact, um, I've got a thing that I did last night that was in the bank to go up tomorrow night. So I wasn't going to record anything at all. And then I saw in the news that Jim Steinman died today, or at least died in this news cycle. Um, and I wanted to do something to honor Mr. Steinman. I'd been promising myself for a long time that I'd be doing some Meatloaf lyrics, some Steinman lyrics, and some Meatloaf music because it's music that is so deeply formative to me and was so important to me as a teenager, as a young man. And also because Steinman for me is an incredible writer of words for lots and lots of reasons. And tonight, as I think about him gone, I didn't want to do one of the obvious songs. I didn't want to do perhaps one of the more outrageous, over the top songs. I wanted to do one of the songs that always moved me and touched me, and that also contains all those markers of what an amazing writer Jim Steinman was. An amazing composer, an outrageous personality and character, but an incredible writer who found his muse in an enormous man called Meat. So, as I consider another one of my heroes fallen, I hope you'll come along on this journey with me as we howl at the moon, for crying out loud.
I was lost till you were found, and I never knew how far down I was falling before I reached the bottom. Well, I was cold and you were fire, and I never knew how the fire could be burning on the edge of the ice field. And now the chilly California wind is blowing down our bodies again, and we're sinking deeper and deeper in the chilly California sand. Oh, I know you belong inside my aching heart. And can't you see my faded Levi's bursting apart? And don't you hear me crying, oh, babe, don't go. And don't you hear me screaming, how was I to know?
I can get lost in this song. I'm pretty sure it was 1977 when this album was released, which would make me 10. I probably had the album when I was 11, maybe 12, 11, 12 years old. I know that I had a cassette player about yay big, and that cassette player had 6 little LED lights, 4 of them green and 2 of them red on the front as a little VU meter when it played. And in 1977, 78, whenever that was the coolest thing ever. And this album, Bat Out of Hell, was on constant repeat on that cassette player. I could sing every word. Well, I knew every word. I couldn't sing any of them. I loved the pomp and the ceremony of Meatloaf's music. And I love the outrageous ideas of love that Jim Steinman wrote about. This is a man that wrote love as this grand operatic vision. He said variously that every song he ever wrote formed part of a retelling of the Peter Pan story. And then he went on to create what became the musical that I was very lucky to go with my daughter to see in the West End of London and have one of the finest nights of my life singing every word with the cast as they did this sort of mashup of Romeo and Juliet and the Peter Pan story with all of these great songs. This man's music and writing defined my life as a young man and probably set an entirely ridiculous expectation for how epic love could be and what an epic story the feeling of love could be in a life. He's an incredible writer and an incredible crafter of words. I mean, I was lost till you were found. This is the same kind. It's not an impossible play on words to imagine the contrast between lost and found. But man, when he puts it together, I was lost till you were found. And I didn't know how far down I was falling before I reached the bottom. I was cold, you were fire, and this line. And I never knew how the pyre could be burning on the edge of an ice field. I mean, it's ridiculous, actually. The imagery is ridiculous and over the top, but it is beautiful. And yet then we get into the chilly Californian wind blowing down our bodies again, sinking deeper and deeper into California sands. Then we get into faded Levi's bursting apart. What does that even mean? I mean, surely he's not doing erection jokes at this point. No, I don't know. But what I do know is I never saw Jim Steinman and Stephen King in the same room at the same time. And I have no evidence to suggest that they're not the same person. Because in the same way that that Stephen King could take a commonly used expression, as he did in books like The Stand, and give them a twist and turn them into something else entirely, Jim Steinman could do throughout his career. He could take commonly used expressions and terms and sentiments and just twist them through 90 degrees, and they became something epic and grand. And what he could also do, like Stephen King, is write Americana. That America that exists in all of our imaginations from all of the movies that they've exported to us since, Elvis Presley and his 27 movies, and that sense of America as that place of hamburgers and hot dogs and faded Levi's and California sand. He captured that essence of America that we love. That essence that we can't help but love because we've been taught throughout all of sort of narrative history that that's where the cool is. That's where Grease is. That's where the West Side Story is. This man captured that America so well. But most of all, he captured this epic love story. Don't you hear me crying, oh babe, don't go, and don't you hear me screaming, how was I to know? I mean, screaming, how was I to know? What did he do? What did this man do that he has to cry out loud to convince the woman that he loves her? I love this song.
And don't you hear me screaming? How was I to know? I'm in the middle of nowhere, needing another line. But there's a border to somewhere waiting, and there's a tank full of time. Oh, give me just another moment to see the light of the day, and take me to another land where I don't have to stay.
This is possibly one of the most impenetrable Steinman lyrics that I can think of. It paints such a picture. It paints such a picture. In the middle of nowhere, near the end of a line. It's a Western. It's a biker movie. A border to somewhere waiting, a tank full of time. I've got nothing but time. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm on the run, I guess. I don't know. Give me just another moment to see the light of the day. Take me to another land where I don't have to stay. I don't know what the picture is here. I know what it paints in my mind, the picture of a frustrated man who has lost the love of the woman that he loves more than any other. And he just wants to convince her that he loves her. He just wants, what was it Neil Peart said? Looking for love or an angel to forgive my sins. I'm going to need somebody else to make me feel like you do. I'll receive that person with open arms, open eyes. What does this line mean? Open up the sky, let the planet that I love shine through. I don't know what the specifics of that line are, but I know that this lyric is a howl of frustration for a man who completely screwed it up and just wants her to know he loves her in a way that is indescribable. But what a wonderful rhythm these words are, how evocative they are, how they paint that picture to me of the desert, of the vastness of that American West, of this epic American love story.
I was damned and you were saved, and I never knew how enslaved I was, kneeling in the chains of my master. I could laugh, all but you could cry. And I never knew just how high I was flying, Lord, with you right above me.
I was damned and you were saved. I never knew how enslaved I was, kneeling in the chains of my master. This is a man that turns slavery into love. The images of slavery. I didn't realize how much I loved you. I didn't realize how much I loved you, how much my love enslaved me to you. And yet that's a good thing. And then this line, I could laugh, but you could cry. That, I don't know when that line started to mean something to me, but I know it means something now because I'm 53 years old and I've known the importance of laughter, but I also understand how to cry, to be willing to cry is so much more. And I never knew just how high I was flying with you right above me. Here I am. I'm flying higher than I knew I could, but only because you could fly that little bit higher. This is such two beautiful verses talking about love as this great enabler, and yet weirdly talking about it in the context of slavery and almost that competitive sense of you were higher than it's hard to entirely break down just why these words are so evocative. And that is Steinman's magic, is he makes you feel like you're inside the words. He makes you feel like you're inside the emotion, even if he doesn't let you into the mechanics of the scene. And then we get into the chorus and we get into For Crying Out Loud. And I'm just going to enjoy it because Jim Steinman's dead. And rest in peace, brother.
It's blowing down our bodies again, and we're sinking deeper and deeper in the chilly California sand. Oh, I know
So epic. Wow. Symphonic, epic, outrageous. Huge. I may be wrong, but I seem to remember that if you had this album on a 45-minute tape, you had to fade the song out there, and you had to fade it out before you got this last phenomenal piece of writing. Of course, I had the album. I bought the album as a boy, put it on tape. I took the album to South Africa. It got damaged by the movers, along with a couple of other albums. I went and bought it again. We left it in the car during a school sports day. It melted to the shape of the back seat of the car, so I bought it again. Then I bought it on CD, obviously. Then I think I probably bought it on CD again at some stage. I'm fairly sure I've had at least 2 copies on CD, and I've subsequently bought it on in various concert forms. And eventually I went on to use another Meatloaf song as the closing title sequence for an episode of television that I wrote that was among the first episodic television series ever written for South African television. And that made me prouder than anything. My history with Meatloaf goes back a long way. But I do think we had to fade this song out, and so I didn't get to listen to this bit as often as I should have. Not when I was walking down the beach on the east coast of England with the cassette player turned away from me so that people could see in the night the little LED lights to see how flash I was. In the late 70s, when everything was Formica and fish fingers was a treat. This sequence is just these contrasts. This sequence is gold.
Taking in the rain when I'm feeling so dry, for giving me the answers when I'm asking you why. And oh my, for that I thank you.
Thank you. Gold.
For taking the sun when I'm feeling so cold, for giving me a child when my body is old. And don't you know that I need you?
The contrasts, the sense of a life together.
For coming to my room when you know I'm alone, for finding me a highway, for driving me home. And you gotta know that I serve you.
I thank you. I need you. I serve you.
For pulling me away when I'm starting to fall, for revving me up when I'm starting to stall. And all in all, for that I want you. For taking and for giving and for playing the game, for praying for my future in the days that remain. Oh, Lord,
serve you, want you, hold you.
Most of all, for crying out loud, for that I love you. Oh, I've been most of all, for crying out loud, for that I love you. Oh, I've been most of all, for crying out loud, for that I love you. When you cry out loud, you know I love you.
Boy, did Meatloaf have a voice. Boy, could he perform these songs. This sequence here, this recitation of epic love, the use of contrasts between rain and dry, sun and cold. Come to my room when I'm alone. Find me on a highway. Finding me a highway and dry. All of these words are fantastic. They are this sort of epic cry from the soul of all the different ways that you have changed my life. But ultimately, as with so many things in the music that I love, it comes down to, but most of all, for crying out loud, I love you. Now, for crying out loud. For crying out loud is an expression, certainly in the idiom of the north of England. Oh, for crying out loud. Oh, for crying out loud. It's an angry idiom. It's an argumentative idiom. And this is why I love Jim Steinman, because he took that familiar phrase, as he so often does, objects in the rearview mirror, for instance, paradise by the dashboard light, for instance. He took these familiar ideas and phrases and he repurposed them. Oh, there's another one. Life is a lemon and I want my money back. This is a man that could take these familiar expressions and familiar ideas and he could repurpose them and give them a completely different twist. And that twist was almost always epic love. For crying out loud, I am crying out loud. I love you. This is a beautiful, amazing, epic song. I listened to it tonight, and I will listen to it again while I process this video to honor one of the most astonishing writers of lyrics that I know, an incredible lyricist, an incredible composer, a lunatic of a man who wrote music for a lunatic of a man and sold tens of millions of albums, and who has been part of my life for over 40 years and will remain part of my life. His name will be spoken as long as I'm alive, and hopefully that's a kind of immortality. For crying out loud, Jim, you know I love you. Rest in peace. Thanks for watching. Keep the faith.